I'm very pleased that we are accompanied by so many real thinkers and activists on the council. Councilwoman Inez Dickens, Councilmember Dan Garodnick, Councilwoman Mark-Viverito, Councilwoman Annabel Palma, and Annabel Palma. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice here. And Councilmember Weprin, and Councilmember Vacca. We are live streaming today, so for people who aren't able to join us, I hope you're able to follow the discussion through your computer. And also we encourage you, if you are so moved and it's your inclination, to get involved through social media. As you can see, we've set up a hashtag and we've provided everybody's Twitter handles. So if there's something that you want to share with the greater Twitterverse, please don't hesitate to do so. And of course, I am delighted to be co-moderating with Christina Greer. And I hope that we're going to have a lively discussion, and she's going to talk a little bit about the format that we hope to follow.
Thank you, Susan. Can everyone hear me? Yes. Okay, great. So welcome again. I'm in charge of rules and also the format. So we want to make sure that you all understand this is a roundtable discussion. We've already participated in 6 of these events, and so ideas, we want it to be free-flowing, but also brief at times, because we want to make sure that all 6 of you can get your ideas out to the audience. So the goal of this particular event is so that you all can leave having known a little bit more about the council members up here, but also their proposals and the different challenges that they're ready to face if and when they become Speaker of the City Council. So we have 4 general areas that we're going to talk about tonight for roughly about 15 minutes each. So if that gives you all a rough idea of how quickly you need to speak about certain ideas. And the 4 main topics are the role of the Speaker, the functioning of the Council, the budget, and member policy. And so we'll sort of let you know when we're shifting gears. And so for the guests that are here tonight, hopefully you all received a note card where you can write a question down, and towards the end of the evening, around 7:35, 7:40, we'll open it up for audience Q&A. So keep in mind, the more clear your question, hopefully the more clear the answer. So we'll have someone walk around and collect those cards at some point in time. So there are no specific time limits. So I guess I'll start, and so depending on who wants to jump in first, we can go there. So, a lot of candidates have been trying to strengthen their credibility as being a counterweight to the next Mayor-elect Bill de Blasio. But working with the mayor as a governance partner. So, what are some specific ideas and requests that you may have to make a better, more collaborative relationship and productive relationship with the incoming mayor? So I'll repeat, sort of what are some specific ideas and or requests that you may have to make your working relationship with the incoming mayor a little more productive?
Any of them?
Yes, any of them.
If we could get the mics up. Okay. Thank you. I thank you, Christina, for that question. Again, I'm Councilwoman Annabel Palma from the Bronx. I think in knowing that we need to build a partnership with the incoming mayor, we really need to focus on making sure that first we have a united council that's going to speak with one voice. And some of the ideas that I've been thinking through would be inviting the mayor over to do briefings for the council as a whole when we have issues that we need to discuss. I know that we get some briefing now from the current administration, but I think if you establish a regular ongoing communication with the incoming mayor where they are around policies, around the budget, around what the administration's ideas are to move the city forward, and do it in a collaborative way with the council, I believe that it gives a lens to creating that kind of partnership that you would need to make sure that the city is working together to further New Yorkers' lives.
Well, I agree with Annabelle in that the responsibility of the speaker is to be able to have a great good, are supposed to also be able to have a check and balance system. So it's a fine line that a speaker walks, because the speaker, he or she, must represent 50 members of the New York City Council and their constituent base. That's the first priority.
Not 51?
Well, 51, but I said 50 because I was really referring to the rest of the members other than the speaker. And the speaker's charged with that. That's the responsibility, to protect the institution second, but first the 50 members. And yet have a working, this will be the first time in 20 years that we have a Democratic progressive mayor relationship, Democratic City Council. This is the first time. This progressive mayor, de Blasio, knows what it is to be a city council and knows what the responsibility is.
Okay, so anyone else want to jump in and talk about next step?
Well, I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that, obviously, it is, as Inez mentioned, it's a different dynamic. We have a Democratic mayor. I think we all supported him. I know in this general election, I don't think any of us supported Mike Bloomberg when we ran last time. So it's going to be a different dynamic where you have a mayor that we've actually worked closely with, had supported, and we'll be supporting him on most of his agenda items. But let's not forget that part of our job is to do oversight of agencies. As he starts putting policies into place, part of our job is to be oversight. I like to talk about the fact that, I said I'm not running for mayor of the city of New York. And one of the problems that we've had in the past is one time we had a speaker who was running against the mayor and spent a lot of time against the mayor. And then this last time, some people said that the mayor and the speaker were too close together. There's got to be a balance. And it's important, that you're not using this office in order to promote yourself for the future. And it's something that I think is important in the speaker to be focused on doing a good job as speaker, working with the members, making sure they can best represent their districts, but at the same time, doing our oversight of city agencies. Not necessarily in a vicious way, and Jimmy Vacca pointed this out. It may be very helpful to mayor to point out things that he may not have realized. But occasionally, there are going to be things that he's doing we want to see changed. That's just the nature of the relationship between the council and mayor.
I think so much of our everyday interaction with the mayor will revolve around relationship. I firmly believe that the executive branch has to show the legislative branch respect, and that the legislative branch has to show the executive branch respect. One thing that I would insist upon is that my colleagues be respected by all commissioners in the city of New York, and that a commissioner have meaningful consultative talks with the chair of the appropriate council committees. As chair of the Transportation Committee for the past 4 years, I have to say that in my case that that's not always happened. And I have not enjoyed that lack of consultation. I think it's only fair that my colleagues be respected at all times. And as speaker representing them, I would support their request to be respected in a consultative way. We understand that there are executive powers and there are legislative powers, but government can best function when we are partners, legislative and executive.
Melissa?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I was going to mention, and Susan just jumped on that, is really the fact that the mayor-elect is a former council member and really understands the role and the responsibilities that we as a legislative body have. We will not abdicate, under my leadership, we will not abdicate our responsibilities as outlined by the charter, which is the oversight and everything else that is delineated. But also, we have to also be respectful of the fact that we have had a clear mandate from the electorate that we want a progressive direction for this city. So we have to be a true partner with the mayor in trying to fulfill that agenda. We're also, as council members, the first line of defense, so to speak, right? We are interacting day in and day out with our constituents, and I think the value of de Blasio having been a council member understands the value that brings to the conversation, so that when we are in hearings, we have oversight, when we have the chairs of the committees, we're talking from direct experiences a lot of the times, that we relay from our constituents. So we bring value to the conversation conversation with him about how we can improve policies, how we can make government more efficient. So I think that having that constant conversation is going to be really welcomed because of the fact of that de Blasio comes from the legislative body, and I think it will lend itself to creating a true partnership where we'll be able to be more effective in getting the job done, in passing laws, in passing the budget, in making policy changes, et cetera. So I look forward to that, and under my leadership, I really will be co-partners with my colleagues to make sure that that dialogue is ongoing and that the legislative branches and our voice is part of the conversation in going forward.
Dan, do you have anything?
Well, we are all in a bit of uncharted territory here for ourselves, and certainly the mayor himself is too. We have not yet encountered a Democratic mayor and a Democratic council, and that changes a dynamic in a real way. We all want to see him succeed. When that first big snowstorm happens, we want to make sure that he gets the job done and that he's able to deliver on the promises that he made during the campaign. But when it comes to the charter and its mandate, the council has to be able to stand on its own, to exercise its own authority, do real oversight, which with my colleagues needs to be respectful, but it needs to be real. And we need to be able to call to question respectfully the things that the city agencies are doing. And we need to be able to do that separate and apart from the mayor's direction. I also think there's another important area, and we do have a great opportunity because the mayor is a former colleague of ours, is to straighten out the way we deal with the budget. The budget dance between the mayor and the council, and this may be a topic you want to get into in greater depth later. I will say that is one area where we really need to do some work because the dynamic today shortchanges the city on a productive and open and transparent of how we should be allocating our funds, and that's something that we'll talk about in a little bit.
I mean, is there how well a Mayor de Blasio will know how the city council works? Is there a possibility that he may end up whipping an issue differently than the speaker? I mean, is that a possibility? Is that a danger?
Whipping an issue?
Yeah, trying to put together his own constituency for something he wants to see move in a particular way, become very actively involved in the council behind the scenes?
Susan, I've had the pleasure of serving with de Blasio when I first got into the council. It's the de Blasio who builds consensus, who builds coalitions, who does not go around trying to undermine an issue, but actually trying to build around that issue to gain the most support. So I don't see him acting any differently than when he was a council member or public advocate, and that's where I say we need to build on that. We need to make sure that, yes, we don't ignore what the charter allows us to do as a council and be that strong council, but that we continue to make sure that when an issue comes around that he wants us as a council to support, that we understand it fully and he understands how we look at it, right? And that, in building his own constituency, his constituency is my constituency. He's the mayor for the people of my district. So the constituency is no different, right? Only that he's now the representative of 51 councils, 8+ million people. So we definitely need to make sure that we're working together around issues, around the promises that he made while he was running for mayor to deliver for New Yorkers.
Hey, Susan, if I can jump in on this, because at the risk of getting some eye rolls up here, this is actually a very good point that I've been trying to make on a very important issue. Julie Williams and I are the only two people who are running for speaker who actually can serve a second term, which means we have to go back to the members and let them know that we have to have accountability and they have to tell us whether we're doing a good job. It's also true for a mayor who knows he could have 2 terms. May not have a second term, may not run, may not win, but he has the opportunity to run for a second term. Having a 1-term speaker, as the rest of the panel does weaken the speaker's role. And we are making, as we'll learn later, policy changes that are going to weaken the central speaker a little bit. I do think it makes for a lot easier to do what you just described, which is go around a council and go around a speaker, especially like in year 3, when they know that this speaker has to be gone because of term limits. So I do think it's a huge advantage that Jumani and I have when it comes to being a strong speaker.
Now I've got 2 members here who really want to speak.
So I know Melissa's going to agree with me on this, but I think you can have a weak speaker or a strong speaker no matter how many terms that you can have. But your question, though, is a really good one, because we don't know the answer to your question. Whether or not a mayor will come in and try to pick off votes in a council just goes to the point as to why you need a strong speaker who is able to hold the body together and make sure that the boat is going in the same direction, even as we take steps to add autonomy and more democracy in the body, and we try to respect individual voices. You need to make sure that the city council, which on power is far outbalanced by the mayor, you need to make sure that the council is holding together and that the mayor is not doing that, because otherwise you just become an appendage of the executive, and that is not the way the charter intended it to be.
Well, that's quickly, because then he's given me a perfect lead into our next question.
No, that I was just going to say that, I agree with what Dana said, but, I look forward to having a more engaged and activist mayor. We've had such a disconnect with this administration for the past 12 years and 20 years, if you want to go beyond Bloomberg, with the people and what we need. And I think that we need to have some level of someone that is in the executive branch that is going to understand what it is that our communities are living through day in and day out. So I look forward to that. But we don't abdicate our responsibility, and we can do it in true partnership. Because again, there is that understanding that we represent our communities. We go back home every night, we interact with our constituencies, we know how the policies are impacting our constituencies and our communities, and we need to be able to have that ongoing dialogue. So I look forward to this progressive mayor really being engaged in a respectful and positive way with this council in order to get the job done on behalf of the constituents of New York City.
Okay, so switching gears a little bit, talking about a strong speaker. One of the controversial areas has been how a bill moves or doesn't move to the floor and what the role of the speaker is. What do you think about a proposal that says once a bill has a majority of council members as sponsors, it's on a fast track? Within a certain amount of time, it has to have a hearing in the committee, and within a certain amount of time after that, it has to go to the floor. What's your response to that kind of a proposal?
I agree, except for one thing. It does have to pass through legal, just to ensure two things, legal and fiscal impact. But the chair, as well as and it currently is available to the chair, but all committee members in whatever committee is impacted, and any other council member that may be interested, should be able to have access to that fiscal impact statement, as well as whether a proposed bill has legal ramifications. Because there are instances where I have thought of different bills, prospective bills, that I thought was a great idea. And then they came back and showed me fiscally it was not possible to be done, and where legally we could be opening up a Pandora's box, if you will. So although it's important and imperative that the committee chairs be able to move legislation, resolutions, or intros quicker, but they also need to have certain information so that we are aware of what we're doing. We can't have a haphazard situation going on. There's got to be some order and definition to it.
Dan?
I don't like it, and I'll tell you why. A moment in time in which a bill hits a certain level of sponsorship,
Right, would be an automatic motion to discharge.
Something that will happen without further discussion in the council. So you would go directly to the committee and you would cast a vote on whether or not to proceed at that point. The reason I don't like that is because we are a body which is a deliberative body, which is one which in its rules already today has a variety of procedures that allow for bills to move, including sponsor's privilege, a motion to discharge, and even a majority of members of the committee can actually put an item on the agenda. So what I fear in triggers, things which create automatic hearings or automatic action by the council, do two things. One, it takes away any discretion that the council may have. It may be that that moment in time, the entire city council agrees that that is absolutely the wrong time for us to be taking up that issue. We should not be taking up that issue. It also creates a situation where you may run afoul of your own rules, where suddenly a bill, because of somebody just adding their name, it suddenly it hits the magic number and it requires the hearing, and nobody takes notice of that.
So,
and I think that we
Dan,
need to. be careful about adding triggers, and I will wrap up, adding triggers which put us in a position where it makes it a less deliberative rather than a more deliberative body.
So we've heard Inez is in favor, you are not. Can you all...
In favor with
caveats.
Yes,
with caveats that you've laid out for
because
us.
there has to be some kind of a setup so that fiscal impacts as well as legal
Fiscal and legal. So very briefly, because we want to get to sort of some of the other subsections of the evening, can you all, Jimmy, I'll start with you. Can you just give us a rough idea, is this something that you would support or not support?
Well, I'm concerned with triggers also, and I do think that the committee structure and the fact that we have committee hearings and the fact that we have staff investigating bills so that we know how realistic those bills are, I'm not willing to bypass that just because a majority of members happen to sign on at a particular point in time. As Speaker, I need discretion to allow that public process to go through. I need committees that will investigate bills. I need the public to be allowed to speak out on bills. And I'm not willing to blindly say that because 26 members sign on to a bill, it should be brought to a vote at the committee and a vote at the council as soon as possible. It would depend on the bill, the circumstances, the public input, the time, and there would be variables that I would have to consider.
I think they all do raise legitimate concerns. You shouldn't just make a trigger who goes on a bill unless there's a process in place exactly who gets to go on a bill. How many bills can you go on? Some people sign on every bill. I mean, I'm not sure it's a legitimate reason to put a bill forward. But I will say this, and I've heard Dan Garodnick agree with me on this. I don't have this fear of putting a bill on the floor that has a possibility of failing. I don't mind a bill going on the floor and maybe getting voted down. I've never understood that hesitancy in the state legislature and in the city council. It's like, God forbid you let a bill, it makes you look weak. Ladies and gentlemen, that's democracy, and sometimes things fail and some things pass, and I do think we have to put some trust in, but there needs to be some type of safeguard in there where people aren't just putting their names on the bill because they got browbeat by some group, some business or something else, or some advocacy group, and they put their name on a bill, but they didn't really like the bill that much, and they may not like it exactly like it's drafted. So I think that Jimmy and Dan raise some very good caveats, and Inez makes a good point. There needs to be some type of system in place.
But that's what we're trying to get at, is members who sign on to bills who aren't really going to support it behind closed doors, and who don't actually help it move forward. That was the genesis of trying to come up with something to be sure that if you sign on to a bill, you're a real supporter.
It just isn't necessarily a knock 26 and that's it. I think we can discuss as a body what the best way to set that system in place.
And you go to the heart of the question. There are a variety of reasons why members sign on to bills. There are multiple reasons why a member may sign on. We have members who sign on and then take their name off. There are reasons for that. I, as a member, am very hesitant to sign my name to any bill or any sign-on letter unless I know the implications of what I'm signing and unless I agree substantively with what I'm doing. I need to know what I'm doing before I sign on automatically. I don't sign on automatically, in fact, to anything.
Susan, I agree with Dan and Jimmy, and I think that this calls for us to have the opportunity to create an independent unit to do bill drafting, to look at these issues, to have a team of people who is helping, that council member who's bringing forward the idea of a bill, understand what those legal ramifications are for that bill, or the fiscal impact is going to be for the city of New York. Help the advocacy group understand those issues as well, and like Mark raised, right? If the bill then whether the speaker favors it or not, goes through the process it needs to go through to committee, to the floor, then just let it get the democratic process that it needs, whether it lives or dies.
I think in essence, what is happening here, and the fact that we had 31 council members sign on to the reforms, is that some level of change from the current status quo is being asked for, right? People are concerned with the way things are happening right now, that maybe there's bottlenecks, stifling of conversation, of debate, of dialogue, of hearings. So it calls for wanting to open the process up. Now, I think what we need to do once we come into a legislative session as of January is then engage in a further debate as to exactly what it's going to look like, those changes, because we have not had the opportunity to have that extensive debate. But I think that opening up and being more democratic and allowing bills to flow needs to be part of the conversation, and that's what our colleagues have asked for, at least those 31 that have signed on. When we come in January under my leadership, it's engaging in further conversation, not only internally, but also with external groups as to what form that will take.
Right.
But I think it speaks to the demand for change, and that's important.
Very quick, just one point, which is that if you add more democracy to the body, and people do not fear to use the rules, such as a motion to discharge or a sponsor's privilege, well then you don't really need the triggers as much because you've had a cultural change in the council so that using the rules is something that's actually respected as opposed to frowned upon.
Right. So this is a perfect segue, right? Because when we think about the body moving, changing, right, and you all want to be as productive for the city of New York as possible, there's been somewhat of a critique that the council has too many committees. Too many subcommittees, right? In order to move things forward, sometimes you all need committees to get this done, obviously. So currently, there are, I believe, 46 task forces, and not enough bills. That's been the critique. 37, right? So you've got committees, subcommittees, and task force. So all we know is it's in the high double digits, right? So is there a way to change the equation to facilitate greater efficiency, right? So you all obviously have great ideas on how you want to see the role of the speaker and the role of the council work with the mayor, but beyond adding more committees, subcommittees, and task force, how do you all envision this getting done?
Is it possible to cut back on the number? So, I mean, from our point of view as advocates, we'd like to see council members who have more time to dig into the substance of some of the bills and develop a real expertise instead of running from council meeting, from committee meeting to committee meeting without time to think.
I appreciate your question. I think you have to look at having council members serve on committees where they have an expertise and utilizing their talents on those committees. We have new members coming on that have specific expertise in certain areas, and they should be on certain committees where we can tap their knowledge and tap their expertise and use it to the city's good. Are some committees too large? Yes, of course. I think the Education Committee is too large. I think the committee has 23 members. And to me, when a committee has 23 members, how do you do effective oversight over the Department of Education? So are some committees, and we have an excellent chairman, Bob Jackson, but Bob Jackson's in a position with 23 members where he often has to limit people's time when the council members ask questions, and then when the public testifies, it's 3 in the afternoon and the hearing started at 10. Now, we as council members know from all these forums we've been to how hard it is to limit our time when we give answers. Well, think of the public that waited 6 hours, because don't forget, city council meetings never start on time, and that will change when I'm speaker, where we'll start meetings on time. So I do think we have to look at size of committees. We could look at number of committees, but I will tell you that knowledge of the people on the committees, what they bring to those committees, to me, is very important. And we have an opportunity now with many new members, and with those of us there that are there in the council for years. We're experienced legislators. We come with a mindset and we know how the council works. So therefore, we have an opportunity to look at that committee structure with these ideas in mind.
But Jimmy, honestly, aren't there 23 members on education because 23 people felt they had either an expertise or an interest?
No, I think there are 23 people because 23 people wanted to be on and were told yes. That's why.
Susan.
Actually, Susan,
that's why they're 23.
Part of that.
I think we have to sometimes tell members, well, we can't do this, but would you accept another committee where we could use your expertise? We're not telling you no because you're not wonderful, beyond wonderful, but we're telling you no because we want these committees to focus on oversight in a meaningful way. Do you know many of these city agencies are going to look totally different by January and February and March than they look right now? And with that in mind, we need these committees to have people on it that are ready for the change, ready to do oversight, prepared.
Okay.
Susan, I think, what, there's 23 members because, like you highlighted, there's 23 members that have an interest in education and want to deliver for them, for the members. That being said, is it too large? To get 23 people together on time, it is large. I believe that the issue that's being raised here is an issue that we need to take back to the 51 council members and have an in-depth discussion with the rest of the council members on how do we restructure committees. Do we do away with some committees? Do we compile some of the subcommittees and make sure that we're hearing bills on the one committee instead of all these committees? But I don't think it's a decision that we can make here today without the input of the rest of our colleagues. I also believe that in order to be, to get the work done effectively, you need a commitment from the members who are sitting in those committees to go to committee, to sit there, to hear the testimony, to hear the public, and not have to run from committee to committee. So maybe as a member, limit yourself to the number of committees you want to sit on, right? So you'll be able then to give one, the committees that you're on the attention that you need to make sure that you're doing it effectively.
Inez? Yeah, Annabelle raised a very good issue, but so did Jimmy. But I limited myself to, I think it was 6 committees. And the thing is, even limiting myself, because some members are on 9. And the thing about it is, even with the 5 or 6 that I'm on, there's a lot of times, like this week, I've got 4 conflicts where I've got 2 committees at 10 and 2 at 1, and the 2 at 10 will not be finished by 1, and I'll be running around trying to get to all 4 committees.
And so I have the solution to that, so go ahead.
So there's validity in what she says, but the other part of it is the reason that there are 23 members, say, on education is because so many members know that education is critical in their districts. So they want to serve on say, education. Now, I chair standard and ethics. I can't get any members on. I can't even get a quorum. I go around and I beg. I beg the members. I said, well, no, I served 5 years ago, whatever it was, when there was an issue. I don't want that again. I ran around just begging. And I even said, I'll buy lunch out of my pocket and feed you if you'll join the committee. And I couldn't do it. And as a result, my committee must be the smallest one in the history of the city council. But having said that, it is an issue, because how do you tell a council member that wants to serve on education, with education being critical to the future of this country, this city, and this state? How do you tell members, no, you cannot be on it because there's 23 members? I agree it takes a discussion on how it's done.
Mark says he has the solution.
Yeah, so this has always been a pet peeve of mine. First of all, I want to endorse Vacca time for committee meetings. I'm all for that. Everything should start on time. But I also always never understood why committees don't have set schedules. Like Jimmy chairs the Transportation Committee, and he does it well. The Transportation Committee meet the second Tuesday of every month at 10 o'clock, or whatever time that is for every committee, because what Inez just described happens all the time. You don't even know when the meetings are coming up 2 days before it gets noticed, and then you have 3 on the same day. That's crazy. It should have a set time, and members shouldn't have conflicts. You can go through a computer program, make sure that the meetings don't meet the same time one of the other members' meetings meet. And then not only that, the public, the members know we got our meeting a week from Tuesday, and they might even know what's on the agenda like a week and a half ahead of time. Imagine that. And I think that's just a great thing for the public, for people's right to know Common Cause, and also for us to know what our schedule are, especially those who live us in the hinterlands of Queens County.
We need to do everything that we can, and the responsibility of the speaker, and that's what it is, to be the most effective and efficient legislative body that we can. And with that also comes respecting your colleagues and respecting the council members. I think that what's been described, it's almost even sad to hear, right? Because it's almost like running around like chickens without a head, and committee to committee. It's almost like there really isn't respect for the structure and for the time that we as colleagues have to put into it. We want to be effective, we want to be efficient. Meeting extensively with colleagues themselves are talking about reducing the number of committees, of streamlining, of finding ways that we can really spend more time on the issue, right? Spend more time.
What are your ideas to do that?
It's basically, I think that there is some restructuring of committees that has to happen. But again, if we want to be a consultative and a democratic body, we need to do this in consultation with our colleagues. We don't have the answers here, and I'm not going to say that I have the answers here. I think that what we were saying, and again, this goes back to the issue of the reforms, that when you have 30 members that want to see change, and even more probably, you know, there's obviously a lot of conversation that needs to happen, and we need to hear those voices and make the necessary changes. But it has to be done in being deliberative. It can't be us, you know, wanting to impose our will. I think that that's something that I think a lot of us here want to nurture, is more of that conversation and collaboration amongst colleagues. But I do think that there has to be some streamlining so that we can be more effective and efficient with our resources.
Can I add one additional thing?
Yes.
Which is that this is an example of where the council's own rules can box in the council a little bit. These 37 committees are all required to meet once a month, which of course the council does to be able to adhere to its own rules. So that means that all of the staff resources and all of the council members' time and the fact that people are running around to different meetings all gets boxed in at roughly the same period at whatever point of the month it happens to be. So I do think that we need to be conscious of that and also be aware of the fact that sometimes it's our own rules which are creating those very issues.
And if I can add, when you consider committees, we have to have an openness about us, about how we consider committees. When I came to the council in 2006, I was appointed chair of the subcommittee on senior citizen centers. And that was my subcommittee. I soon found out that I was the only person on the subcommittee. So I got along with the committee members very well. But then what happened was within 6 months, the mayor proposed restructuring senior centers, and we had 30 to 40 centers on a hit list to be closed. And I worked with Chair Arroyo of the Aging Committee, but I said to myself, this subcommittee is important. I went to senior centers throughout the city. I reassured many of the stakeholders. I got that list of what center was going to be closed and why, and we fought the administration, and we ended up winning. Now, did I know in 2006 that subcommittee of one was going to have that type of an input, that type of an effect on people's lives? No, I didn't. But the opportunity was there for me to exercise with my colleagues a real organized effort that was successful and beat back the administration. So I sound a little cautionary note when I say something like that. That's why we have to give the speaker a degree of discretion. We have to have a relationship with the members and the speaker, because events often transpire. And being at the right place at the right time means that we can serve people in this city who do not have a voice at that particular point.
Jimmy, you had a quorum.
I did.
Right.
And I started on time.
Right.
So I think we're going to move on to another topic.
Shall we move on to budget? Or the budget. So what do you all think is the proper needs-based indicator to determine member item allocation? And how else would you make the process more equitable and less dependent on speaker discretion?
I'll do it if you want. I'll take the first hit.
Okay, so this is about sort of, you know, member items and the debate around member items.
I know there's some talk about rules reforms, which I endorse. One of the problems we had with member item discretionary money was that people got put in categories. Someone got the most, someone got the least. And sometimes someone did something wrong and ended up getting the least. And that's not the way it should be done. Now, there's a debate going on of trying to set up an established formula, which I agree with, the idea in the budget that people aren't embarrassed by being made number 1 to number 50. I suggest they be equal. And the reason I think it's equal, and there's some talk about doing it by need, but need, we're talking about $50 million in member item money only, $50 million citywide, and a $70 billion budget. If I want something for need, which I want, that's the $70 billion budget, ladies and gentlemen. That goes for need. That goes to go to places that need it, and they're going to get real money. Here we're talking about literally 5,000 for this group, 10,000 for that group. That's not going to make that big a difference on need. And every committee, every community has needs that aren't funded by the city budget. And I give this example. I fund 2 senior programs in my district that wouldn't exist, one for South Asian community and one for the Chinese community. They would not exist if it wasn't for my member item money. And so I just think that member item money, that little bit of money that the member gets, has some discretion, some power that the mayor doesn't have to give to his or her district for a need that is unique to that district. And we all have them. So
how would some of you make it more equitable?
Well, again, the reforms call for having further debate on whether you do it as a needs-based formula based on whatever indicators you decide to choose for any given district, or whether it's just equalization, and then obviously the speaker still would have some ability to help colleagues in the districts.
Right, but we're trying to get a sense of what are those indicators. People
the
have said
indicators, I mean, we all
Like
know, let me be clear, on my perspective, I would never support the elimination of discretionary grants. Let me be very clear about that, because those grants help, as Mark was saying, but particularly they're most helpful to communities of color in this city that have been really disenfranchised. And when you talk about a Bloomberg administration that has centralized, you know, the way resources are allocated, it leaves a lot of our community-based organizations in our districts behind. So always having more accountability and transparency is clear. Now, you could talk about needs-based formula, there's a whole bunch of different indicators. You could talk about poverty measures.
But if you all are chosen speaker, how would you all deal with the budget and the discretionary funds, specifically? So would it be needs-based? Would it be
it would be needs-based.
A flat tax, if you will? Like, I mean, we want brass tacks here.
Actually, sometimes I have a problem when we talk about needs-based, and last year was classic. And Councilmember David Greenfield's district, we were talking about an initiative, and we were talking about, not just in his district, citywide domestic violence. And the formula that was being used was based upon need, based upon the number of calls that went in to the police department. That's what was used, the indicator. Now, that seemed on the surface to be very fair. However, Councilmember Greenfield raised a very valid and good point, and that's in his district, culturally, the women will not call the police department. So that therefore, domestic violence was high in his district, he argued, but yet, if you look at the indicator which was being used, the need based upon the telephone calls to 911, then it was unfair. And I hadn't thought about it, and I agreed with him, and stood by his side that is, you know, maybe we have to look at something else other than just the indicator that was being used, which was the 911 call.
But there's a difference between the initiatives, which is what Inez is talking about, and then the individual discretionary allocations by district, right? And so I think that's what we're kind of alluding to in a way is that within the districts that we each represent, you know, how is it determined from the speaker's end how much each district gets? And that right now, to be honest, let's be fair, right? And there is right now, every council district gets a bottom line amount. Very bottom line amount, it's the same amount for every district. But then beyond that, there's an incredible discrepancy, you know, and it's really at the discretion of the speaker how much you get above that.
Well, that's what we're trying to get at.
Right.
If you all are chosen speaker, how will that happen?
Well, what I'm saying is it's through consultation, but there is an agreement, at least by 31 members that have signed on to reforms, that some sort of equalization and some sort of depoliticizing the process needs to happen. And that, again, has to be determined. We would have to figure out what the factors would be to determine the needs-based formula, whether we use poverty, whether we use maybe public housing in each district, whether we used Section 8 vouchers. It could be a whole bunch of different factors.
For a long time, my district got the bottom line, which was $84,000 in member item for a long time. I don't think that a budget needs, the budget process should be used to, in any way, shape, or form, punish or hurt anyone or try to embarrass anyone. That's not what we're here for. That's not what we should be doing. What we should be looking at is what my community needs in terms of housing, jobs, education, what his community needs, which is very different, although as diverse as mine, but very different in terms of income levels. Let's look at what the budget of the city the budget for the city of New York looks like, and let's put money in those areas that we need, that we have that mandate that the mayor's calling for to deal with certain issues. When we talk about daycare centers and yes, this current outgoing mayor just baseline a whole bunch of programs for us. But we need to figure out in baselining those, are they really going to help our communities? Is this new mayor going to be able to negotiate a budget with the city council that's going to be responsible and reflective of the needs of those communities. And for us to talk about member items, we need to be in a room with 51 other members to have a real discussion on how do we do this and get them to agree with us.
So Dan has been waiting patiently, but all I can say is if you guys keep member items, it just gives me more opportunities to get those calls from the press.
But
thanks a lot.
Melissa raised a good point in that many organizations benefit from the member items that we give them. The Urban Justice Center I fund the Urban Justice Center. They do good work in my community, and they do good work throughout the city of New York. So we for us not to be able to, have that partnership with these organizations that are helping us.
But there are other ways than leaving it to your sole discretion. That's a whole other program that we should do.
So let me just jump in, because I'm not going to repeat what was said, but I think that we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves here. This is a conversation that we need to have with our colleagues. There are a number of us who signed on to rules reforms which would create one of two scenarios, either a formula-based or a needs-based formula, or an equality principle, which I think it's a very important step. The equality principle has an appeal to it in that everybody is in the same boat, and it's easy to explain, it's easy to understand, and it's easy for us to be able to articulate to one another as to where we stand. Of course, it doesn't take into account need at all, so that's the downside. On the formula, on a needs-based formula, it has the appeal of saying, well, listen, if a particular district needs certain things or has certain higher incidence of poverty or whatever we define it to be, you are able to give more money to that district. The problem is that you frequently have groups that are providing services they are located in a lower needs district, providing services in a higher needs district, and they look to the local council member who represents where they are for help. And it also runs into a different problem, which we have seen with the Beacon, which sits right on the district between Councilmember Mark-Viverito and my district, right on 95th Street and 3rd Avenue, which, because it is physically located in a more affluent zip code, it gets cut every year, even though it is actually providing services to people in a less affluent zip code right across the street. And so we have to be aware of those sorts of challenges which exist with both.
So I'm going to move us along. I'm going to shift gears into a question still within the council functioning. The council has three primary roles: land use, budget, and oversight. We've talked about the charter revisions. Does the council do a good job in each one of those? And where do you think it could improve in those three areas?
Well, in the case of oversight, the various committees are responsible to have the commissioners to come in and give the report, the budget, etc. In the case of NYCHERS, they have not been transparent with the city council, with the council member. Councilmember Rosie Mendez has not been able to really get a full report, a budget report as to what has occurred. I'm just using that as one example. And so it has been unfair. And in some instances, for instance, the police department, we have oversight, Councilmember Liz Crowley, and public safety as well. And what happens is that frequently a commissioner disrespects the council and doesn't come in and provide full information. And a lot of times the council members will ask various questions at the hearing, and the people who come in their stead don't have the answer. And then we say, well, would you get it to our committee chair? And yes, and a lot of times, more often than not, we never get the answer. So as far as the oversight, there's oversight, great oversight with some commissioners and some of the agencies, and very difficult with others. And what was the other one?
No, now we're going to, somebody else gets a chance.
I think the council does an okay job on oversight, but we could do a lot better. On land use, I think we do a pretty good job, and it is on budget, which is where we really have a problem. We have a problem on budget. Budget's such an unpopular topic. Must have been something else, right? I couldn't imagine. I
think they all ate in the same restaurant is the problem. They all went to that Mexican place down the block.
So let me just tell you about why I view that on the budget. Okay. Hey guys, I get to talk about whatever I want to talk about here. Budget Budget is the area where I think we really have the problem. And the reason we have the problem, and because when Mark noted it, we're talking about a $70 billion budget, and we're really dealing with, when we're talking about discretionary, or we're talking about the issues of the balance between the council and the mayor, we're talking about a $350 million piece which gets cut out, and we fight to restore every single year. And we need to make sure that when we're talking about these units of appropriation that the mayor sends over to us, that $4 billion of the $19 billion in the Department of Education's budget is not lumped into a single unit of appropriation, or $2 billion of the $5 billion in the police department isn't lumped into a single unit of appropriation. These are the challenges that we really face, and I think that we need to work with the new administration to be able to correct that.
Anyone else?
I've said before that one of the reforms that I would implement would be how the committee structure in the council works. Land use and other committees, the members work very hard. The reality is, though, that we need to brief all committee members before these hearings take place so that they know what's on the agenda and they know what is going to be happening before they walk into the room. That does not happen now. Many times committee members walk into a room, go for a hearing, have papers in front of them, and then they just go along and they're expected to vote aye. And that's a lot of baloney. I want members to know what they're doing before they walk in the room, and to have an opportunity to have the same briefing that a chair of a committee would have. Regarding the budget, I'm tired of OMB coming to hearings and giving us a lot of gobbledygook, and that's what it is. OMB has to be more specific with us. They have to tell us where the money is being spent. I do not believe that most of the money is not going to be transparent because it's in pensions and it's in salaries. That's what we've been told for years. We need further information. I think we can do a better job in budget. I think we can do a better job in committees. I'm one of those members, I have to say very quickly. Okay, very quickly. Well, I think that's quickly enough. No, I'm one of those members who believes that we can do better, not just when it comes to the discretionary item, and I'm not one of those members who signed on to the reforms. I believe we need reforms, but I believe that some reforms in that package are good and some have to be improved upon. But I believe that we can do better also when it comes to agency budgets and oversight as to where the money's going.
Okay, so I'm sorry, but Jimmy has eaten your time. Okay, so we're gonna move on to our last sort of big ticket item, which is member policy, right? So there will be roughly 20 incoming freshmen to the council in 2014. They will need education and support to successfully execute their duties. What is the role of the speaker and your central staff to help these individuals become the most efficient city council members that they can be?
Hey, good. I'm going to jump on this one because I like this topic. So some of you may know I served for 19 years in the elected body. I was in the state legislature, and then I worked in the city council. So I actually think I have a unique perspective on what members, rank and file members, are to best serve their districts. And what we need is a speaker who spends their time focused on what members need to best represent their districts. And so educating members, yes, our staff is supposed to work for the members, not the other way around.
Okay, I'm going to have to
too
be
often it's that way.
provocative and say, are you suggesting the Shelley Silver model?
What's the Shelley Silver model? I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Depends on how you define it.
No, I'm not saying what I'm saying. I was frustrated by a lot of the things Shelley Silver did, and I really respect a lot of the things Shelley Silver did. So what I'm actually suggesting the Mark Weprin model, which is part Shelley Silver, part Gift Miller, part Chris Quinn, and it takes the best of everyone in that they got to get people involved in the process. And I mentioned before, I'm not running for mayor of the city of New York. My entire focus during this next 4 years is going to be making sure members have the support they need, know what the issues are, have meetings scheduled on time and a certain day so we know what's on the agenda, so Jimmy can have his issue addressed, and have him and have members, have staff working for these members to make sure they best represent our client, who's the city of New York.
Okay,
and that is
somebody
what
else
our
gets
focus
a
should be.
chance.
I would say very briefly, I think the Speaker's office is supposed to be a constituent service operation for the 50 other members. The needs of the districts are different. The needs of the members are going to be different. Finding out what they need to be able to succeed, whether it's help training staff, or whether it's help problem solving, or whether it's help devising a communication strategy, whatever it is, that is the job of the speaker to help them sort out.
I've said this before and I'll say it again. I would look at the community outreach unit in the Speaker's office and I would redesign that unit to do community outreach in the offices of the council members who need help, be it designing an immigration form, reaching out to groups where contact has often been difficult, having any type of program and outreach. I would have that unit be available to members and have members know that that unit's there for them. That is a member-driven unit more than it is a speaker-driven unit. I want members to know that that's a unit at their disposal.
2 minutes, and then we're going to go to audience questions because we've got some great ones.
I think definitely the speaker has to be, he or she has to be accessible to the members because it's not going to work any other way. In 2004, and I was the only member coming in, and I didn't get a training class. I didn't get the 2-day training that these new members are getting. And it was Robert Jackson who grabbed me by the hand and was like, "Come on, kid, let's go up to the chamber," because the charter meeting was going to start. So I believe is being a real support system to these new members that are coming in by helping them navigate whether it's legislation, the budget, what we need to do as a council for them to be supported and gain some traction.
And no, it's just basically the fact that the body has to be member-centered, member-driven. And I know that Jimmy mentioned the issue of the community assistance unit, which definitely needs to be restructured. But the other issue that I would give an example is those council members, and it's about 12 now in this incoming year, that are doing participatory budgeting. Which I greatly support, and I'm one of the pioneer members, but providing institutional support from the council for those members that want to engage in that process because it is very intensive.
Central staff that would be dedicated to participatory
There will be central
budgeting?
staff that can lend support to the offices that need it because there are systems that we've created which makes it easier to implement in a district but needs additional support.
Okay.
So that's the kind of example of having it be a member-centered.
All right, so we've got some great audience questions, and I'm very happy to see that some of the audience questions are some of the questions we came up with in advance that we didn't have time for. So thank you. First question, how will the speaker actually be chosen?
By the members. There has to be a consensus among the members because
Is there a secret ballot process? I mean, do you actually fill out slips of paper and vote? I mean, how do you do it?
Well, so far there's been a lot of discussions with members, so I believe that when the members decide who they will be comfortable with, that process then in terms of voting will take place when we go in.
Many
in
members
January.
are asking for a secret ballot and not a roll call ballot. And so the members will have to decide which way they want.
If a member of the audience has the answer to this question, we really would like it, actually. But January 8th at 12 noon, we're going to elect a new speaker. What happens between now and then? Boy, it's anyone's guess, honestly. We really don't know the process. We are in some uncharted territory, so we're not exactly sure. But at that day, we're going to proclaim who we're voting for, and I think it has to be done out loud on January 8th, and that's when we'll know. So stay tuned.
Okay. Okay. Do you favor enhanced disclosure by council members as to their relationship to special interests and lobbyists? This is, I guess, disclosure of outside income, disclosure of business relationships.
Yes, yes.
And that's being done now. When we do budget, either pass the budget or we have to declare publicly that my husband or my wife works at a school, even if the member is not funding. If another member is funding, or if it's done on the speaker's list, or if it's done as an initiative, they have to declare publicly as well as write it that there's some connection.
So if you have outside income, right, because allegedly the speaker position is a part-time position, how thorough should the disclosures be? If you have a law practice on the side, should you have to identify your clients?
I think I know that's a conversation that we've heard a lot at the state level as well, but obviously I think that yes, I mean if you are having outside income and you're in a firm of any type, whether it's an accounting firm or law firm, then there should be a level of disclosure. The same way that when we receive contributions, right, we have to be able to disclose whether or not that individual is doing business with the city. Well then if you are at a firm of any type, and your clients are doing business with the city of Anyway, I mean, I think there should be some level of additional transparency provided.
For those of you, though, we haven't heard from, do you all agree or disagree that this should be a level of disclosure?
I just want to add this, if it's all right. Currently, we must file a COIB form annually. And on that, we must declare, and they put that on the webpage, we must declare any outside income, stocks and bonds, anything that we have a part of. We currently must declare it, and then it's put on a website. So we currently are doing that. So, and the public can pull that up and see what income we have. Now, we can ask for certain things to be redacted, but it's very little that's approved to be done so.
So, next question from the audience. We have one of the participants here who supports and has implemented participatory budgeting. Why do the rest of you not support the process where residents can vote on how $1 million can be used for community needs?
Well, wait a second. So let me jump into that, because I think that question is framed in a. I didn't make it up. Not blaming you, Susan. But the question suggests that those of us who are not doing participatory budgeting right now don't support participatory budgeting, and I think that is not accurate. In fact, we give great credit to those who took the experiment and went and tried it in their districts. It is a hard thing to do. It is extremely time-consuming. It is staff demanding, and it is a really good experiment and something which I think we all want to encourage. The reason why I didn't do it in my district was I had a few big issues that I thought were more demanding of my staff time than even participatory budgeting. So if there were additional resources that were available to me, as I think that the central staff of the Speaker's office should be providing to members, I might have done it because it would have been extra staff or extra resources for me to be able to provide it in my district. Otherwise, with the significant land use issues, whether it was the sale of Stuyvesant Town or the East Midtown rezoning or whatever, I felt like I wanted to concentrate my staff members there. And I think that it's going to be right for some districts and it's not going to be right for others, and we have to respect the individual members, but we have to give them the resources to be able to do that if they want to make that choice.
I've always said that in order for us to do participatory budget in the way that it's being done now, that we as a council have a big responsibility on letting the public know what the actual dollars are. And in the members that did it, again, not discrediting them for what they've done, but it takes a lot of work. So we as a council have to organize ourselves to make sure that if that's the way 51 members want to do the budget, that we are going to implement the structure to be able to support that process. For those members who want to do it, and if the number now is going to be 12, any speaker, myself or any one of these individuals up here, will have to make sure that those members are supported in terms of staff time, whether that's central staff or any other resources that the Speaker's office can provide to enable them to do the participatory budget that they want to do. But again, the public cannot leave here and think that the rest of us that have not done participatory budget don't engage in that process, because my staff from January to June we have to meet with organizations. We have to go visit any programs that we're funding. We have to make sure that they're vetted and that they are meeting the needs that we wanted them to meet in the district. And the community gets to participate in that way.
Okay. Mark.
All right. Just very quickly, I assume when the question said one of us, I assume they were referring to Melissa, but I actually, too, did participatory budgeting. And
Thank you for the
I don't really like this question coming up, because I don't want people to dig their heels in on this issue, because I was skeptical at first about whether this was a good idea. But what I love about it, it's similar to the way I feel the council can work, where members are involved in everything that we do, that people, when they feel involved in the process, care more about the process, respect the process. It's one of the reasons I've always been an advocate for open government, whether it's televising sessions or anything else, because people, when they see it in action, they believe more in it. And I would like to see it done citywide, where on the news they announce this week is participatory budgeting voting. Go out to your local sites and vote and be part of the action. So I'm all for that. And I all for public forums, even ones like this, even though it's our 7th one, because you know what I learned is how good all these people are too. I mean, each one is really knowledgeable in what they're talking about. They are articulate, and I've said this before, I could support any one of them as leader. It's because of forums like this that you get to see people in action, the public gets to learn about them, and I think that's great.
Actually, you know, all of us participate in a participatory budgeting. I credit and acknowledge any members who tried it. It is an experiment. I think that central staff should give assistance because right now, with it as an experiment, it was for $1 million, which means you're going to only fund one or possibly two items, because things that you fund don't get started unless you put all the money in. And once you fund it, like we put in for cameras, if it's going to take $2 million, then you can put in $1 million this year. You got to put in the next million the next year before they will even begin the process of putting in the cameras. That's to use that as an example. But all of us use participatory in that each one of us, whether we've done it with the 1 million or we do it because our communities come to us, and with great programs, not so great programs, poor programs, programs from Jersey, programs from everywhere else, programs from citywide, and we meet with, each one of us meets with all of the, including our borough delegations. We take the time and meet with everybody, and we frequently, like I make unannounced visits to programs in my district so I can truly find out if they're doing the work.
One more comment, or shall we go on to the next question?
No, my colleague said it all.
Great. So this question, our last Speaker of the Council, and this is verbatim, don't shoot me. Our last Speaker of the Council was never engaged with what the citizens of NYC wanted, and there are 2 exclamation points there. What about a requirement for town hall meetings with their constituents?
I'm going to take offense on behalf of the current speaker a little bit, because, look, we don't agree with everything you people do, but Chris Quinn works so damn hard for so long, for so many people. I'm sorry.
Excuse me, let's
spent a lot of hours.
Let's not do that, friends. Let's not do that.
The characterization is just incorrect. I'm sorry, it's incorrect. I disagreed with her on issues. I've agreed with her on issues. I just think it's an unfair characterization. Obviously, look, the one thing you learned from this panel is we all care about the city of New York. We all represent districts that we care about very much. We're doing this, and we spend a lot of time away from our families. We work very hard. We do that because we love this city, each one of us. And, you know, I'm committed to that. I'm committed to doing the best job I can as a city council member, no matter who the speaker is. And if I ever been lucky enough to become speaker, I'm going to do the best job I can as speaker to make sure the members can represent the districts that they care about so much.
Yeah, I also think that relative to town halls, we as candidates for speaker, and whichever of us is successful, we would look to our colleagues to give us input on what are they getting from their districts and what are the needs. I get emails from my colleagues all the time. I see Adanis Rodriguez is here, Gail Brewer. I'm always getting meetings. They have meetings. They have so many meetings in their districts. And believe me, I have a lot of meetings in my district too. So we can give that input to the speaker's office and to the speaker, him or herself. So the eyes and ears the speaker has really has to be the members. The members are the eyes and ears in the community. We cannot expect any speaker to have town hall meetings 3 and 4 nights a week. The job of the council has to be member-driven. The speaker has to be accessible. The speaker has to listen. His or her staff has to be in touch with various communities, has to address crises that happen, and has to work with the administration on getting results. The speaker must be a results-orientated person. That's what people want to see.
Okay, Dan?
If I wanted to say that, I think that, you know, I'm a big believer in having real engagement with the constituents, and that we really need to be, in order to be effective, we have to have that ongoing dialogue. As speaker and as a legislative body, we have to figure out how we can implement levels of change that are going to encourage greater participation and collaboration from those that we represent. You know, we've talked about, and I think I would love to see hearings happening outside of the city hall, outside of the city council, in communities, as a way of engaging when we have really interesting or controversial topics that we're having hearings about. I think moving around and engaging that's why I believe in participatory
What about
governance.
satellite video from the different boroughs?
That's
for
also,
hearings?
I mean, I think that we have to look at all that. We have to figure out how we engage. There's such deep level of cynicism, you know, in people in general about government. That's why I love participatory budgeting and just the model in general, what it speaks to, because the people, when we evaluate who participated in the process, are people who have normally not engaged in the formal election process. That tells you that people want partnership and people want to feel part of the decision making, and we as legislators have a responsibility to figure out ways that we can encourage greater participation, not stifle it. And I think that structurally, the way government has been set up, it's to try to stifle participation. I'm really looking forward to opening up government and including and making voices heard and people having their the ability to be represented.
If you had said that earlier on, I would say, okay, it's easy to say that. How would you do that? But if I do that, we're going to go way over time. I want to hear from Dan, and I've got two really good questions that I want to be sure we hit before we have final words from Shani.
So the idea of a speaker doing town hall meetings, I think, is not the right formula here, because what that does is it suggests that it is about the speaker. And we really do not want this to be about the speaker. We want this to be about the individual member. If an individual member wants the speaker in their district to be able to add weight to a particular issue or to help them solve a problem or whatever it is, then good, let's do it. But the speaker is not the mayor in this context, and they don't control the city agencies. Town hall meetings are those circumstances in which you bring all of the folks who are up at the table, the police department, the sanitation department, all the rest of them, to be able to solve those problems. We want the speaker to be able to put the spotlight on the individual member, and in this context, to be able to stand in the background.
And Susan, I just want to add that there have been instances, it's up to the discretion of the committee chair. But for instance, Jimmy Vacca has had meetings, hearings in various districts around the city other than his own. So did John Liu also have hearings in other districts other than his own. So that's up to the committee chairs to decide that an issue should be have a hearing in a different district.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Palma said that the council must speak with one voice. Why must it? Can it? And should it?
I think it definitely can. I believe it's, again, up to us to make sure that we're unified, that we're working in collaboration, that we as council members have open communication with each other, and as speaker, you're engaging the council members to make sure that we stay together and united around the issues that are going to be important for the city of New York. So I believe that, you know, there's 51 members that are elected to the city council, and I believe that 51 members, whether we agree or disagree in a room on any particular issue, we should be able to leave that room and put our differences aside, because it's going to be better for the city of New York.
And in actuality, we have Democratic caucus twice a month. Now the Republicans, the 2 or 3 or whatever it is, Republicans are excluded, but the Democrats are that we do have a caucus, a Democratic caucus twice a month, of which things that are on the agenda for the next stated are put in writing and it's distributed, and we can add or ask for things to be removed based upon what is written there, and the policy analysts all come and give us a reasoning behind whether it's legislation, land use, resolutions, whatever. So that is done, and that is a perfect avenue that allows us to, and that's what we do now, is we all sit there and argue. And we try to come to a consensus then at the Democratic caucus, because that's where we can ask individual questions, because I'm the one that calls the members' names out. And we ask the questions about anything that's on the agenda.
I believe that we have to have a fair and accessible, but a strong speaker of the city council. I do not believe in democratization where we have a different speaker every month. That's not going to happen. We cannot have a speaker who, when the speaker goes to the mayor does not think the speaker speaks for the body. The model I gave before, and I'll give it again, because we've had 7 forums and I can't have new material every time, is the model I give you is what has happened in Washington, What happened in Washington is that when John Boehner went to President Obama to negotiate, President Obama realized he did not speak for the body. And President Obama went to Harry Reid in the Senate and said, we've got to get the government reopened. Let's you and I do what we have to do and give it to Boehner to vote on. He can like it or lump it. When the speaker goes to the mayor, the speaker has to know that the body is united. I am not going to do anything as speaker or as a member of this body that would weaken the institution of the Speaker of the Council. We're talking about government beyond politics. We're all here. This is a political process? No, no, no. I tell my colleagues, this is a governmental process. This is about what this council is going to be like during the next 4 years, and this is going to be about relationships and an understanding that we are a meaningful legislative body. And sometimes we have to put the rhetoric and the verbiage aside, and we have to think governmentally. I think that analogy that I just gave is an analogy we have to keep in mind going forward.
So there is one last question that actually goes against the rules, because this really is a yes or no question from the audience, and I think it's a very interesting one. No. You're going to be sorry.
So Susan, for the sake of time, let's just start with Inez and come down in a strict yes or no.
Would you support providing the necessary funds so the council members can offer better salaries for their staff and eliminate the huge discrepancy that currently exists between central staff and district staff?
Well, it would require all of us to work together, but my staff would be more than happy for us to enter into that dialogue, because my staff is on the low end of the pay scale.
Yes, there needs to be a better balance.
Yes, completely.
Absolutely. Yes.
There has to be a better balance, yes.
Last comments from Shani.
Let me just ask you all to join me in giving a huge round of applause to our panelists, our moderators. Just a few quick points, if you'd indulge me for a moment. The tweeting does not end just because the panel does. I'm sure that this conversation has sparked a lot of discussion that you all would like to have amongst each other. I encourage you to have that happen in the digital realm. All of our hashtags and Twitter handles are available both on the screen and in your program, so I encourage you to keep this conversation going in the cyber realm. I'd also like to remind you that there is a literature table just outside this door to your left. As you leave, please do stop by, pick up some information about the organizations that have co-sponsored this. Finally, I'd like to just thank the staff of Common Cause New York, of each of our council members, of the Human Rights Project at the Urban Justice Center and the New York Law School. And in particular, I'd like to acknowledge the efforts of Nicole Bramstead, who really put a lot into creating this.
We all wish you a happy, blessed Hanukkah for the last 2 days, and a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you all for coming.